It started with something simpler. Knock at a back door, a man with tired eyes, and a bowl of soup. But that one moment would grow into a story no one would forget. Years ago, Jamal Davis was 27. Life hadn't gone the way he planned. He had dreams, once big ones. He graduated with honors in business from a local college, full of hope and ideas. But those dreams faded quickly after his mother passed away and his father became sick. Bills piled up, and Jamal had to make a choice: chase success or take care of the man who raised him. He chose family every morning before sunrise. Jamal would help his father with his medication, prepare him breakfast, and make sure he was comfortable before heading to work. His job? A kitchen worker at the Golden Fork, an expensive restaurant downtown. It wasn't glamorous. He scrubbed pots, cleaned greasy floors, and packed up leftovers after the guests were gone. Nobody really knew his name, and most didn't care to learn it. To the staff, Jamal was just the guy in the back. To the owner, Robert Manning, Jamal was invisible. Manning ran the restaurant like a king. He had thick silver hair, a sharp tongue, and a reputation for being harsh. His suits were tailored, his voice cold. He didn't believe in second chances, and he certainly didn't believe in charity. Jamal never argued, never slacked. He just did his work and went home. He wasn't angry at the world. Didn't have time to be. Then came that night. The wind outside howled, and snow blanketed the streets. Jamal was finishing his shift when he heard a soft knock at the back door. First, he ignored it. It was late. It was just the wind. But then it came again, just a little louder. He walked over and slowly pulled open the door. Two children stood there, thin, shaking, and covered in snow. The boy looked around 10, the girl maybe 7. Their jackets were torn, their shoes soaked through. The boy stepped in front of his sister protectively. "I'm sorry," he said, voice small. "We're just hungry." Jamal stared at them for a moment. His heart tightened. "Wait here." He went back inside, grabbed a bowl of hot soup, a couple of bread rolls, and wrapped it all in a clean towel. He added 2 oranges and a bottle of water. Then he returned to the door and handed the bundle to the boy. "Eat slowly," he said softly. "It's hot." The girl peeked from behind her brother. Her eyes were wide, but they sparkled with a quiet thank you. Jamal nodded and closed the door. He leaned against it, took a deep breath, and wiped his eyes. The next night, they were back. He didn't ask questions. He just handed them food again. Again the night after that. Over the next 2 weeks, he saw them more often. One evening, the boy spoke up. "I'm Eli. This is my sister Nina." Jamal smiled. "Nice to meet you. I'm Mr. J." They told him bits of their story. Their parents died in a crash. They'd bounced between shelters, but some weren't safe, so they left. They stayed wherever they could, under bridges, stairwells, even bus stations. Some nights they didn't sleep at all. Jamal started packing more food. Sometimes he brought old scarves or socks. One cold night he gave Nina his own gloves. "You need them more than I do," he said, "but kindness, no matter how quiet, doesn't always go unseen." 3 weeks later, Jamal handed them their usual dinner, bowl of stew, bread, and apple slices. Nina smiled as she held the warm container close. Then a voice shouted from behind, "What do you think you're doing?" Jamal turned and froze. Robert Manning stood at the door, arms crossed, face red with rage. "Mr. Manning," Jamal began. "These 2 again?" he barked. "You've been feeding them from my kitchen?" "They're just kids, sir," Jamal said. "I give them leftovers." "No one eats this food. I thought you thought." Manning stepped forward. "You don't get paid to think. You're stealing from my business to feed street rats?" "They're not rats," Jamal said quietly. "They're hungry children." "Save me the speech," Manning snapped. "You're fired right now. Get out. Don't bother looking for work. I'll make sure no one hires you." Jamal looked at Eli and Nina, their eyes full of fear. Then he turned back to Manning. Understood. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just took off his apron, folded it neatly, and walked out with the children by his side. That night, they sat together on a bench near the train station. Jamal had a little cash in his wallet, just enough to buy them some fries and a hot drink to share. He wrapped them in his coat and told stories until they fell asleep on his shoulders. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He had no job, no savings, and now 3 mouths to feed. But as he watched the 2 children sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks, something in him shifted. He wasn't scared. He was angry. Not at the children, not even at Manning, but at a world where doing the right thing could cost you everything. A world where helping to innocent kids could be seen as a crime. That night, under the dim street lamp, Jamal made a promise to himself. I won't stay down. I won't stay silent. And one day, I'll build something better. Not just for me, but for them, and for anyone else the world left out in the cold. Morning came slowly. The streets were still wet from melted snow, and cold wind blew through the alleyways. Jamal woke up stiff and sore, still sitting on that bench at the bus station. Eli and Nina were curled beside him, asleep under his coat. He hadn't slept much. His mind had been racing all night. No job, no money, no direction. But somehow, he didn't feel lost. Jamal had always followed the rules. He'd worked hard, kept his head down, respected his bosses, and stayed humble. But when he showed kindness, they threw him out like trash. That truth hurt more than losing his job. He realized that no matter how polite he was or how quietly he served, people like Manning would never see his worth. And so, for the first time in years, Jamal decided to stop waiting for someone to give him a chance. He would create his own. That, the very day he walked into a small print shop and used his last $25 to make a stack of flyers. He spent all afternoon pinning them on street poles, coffee shop corkboards, and laundromat walls. The flyer was simple. Need your house cleaned? Or your yard fixed? Trustworthy, hardworking, and kind. Call Jamal. By evening, he got his first. Call an elderly woman named Mrs. Harper. Her backyard was full of broken furniture and fallen branches. She didn't have the strength to clean it up. Jamal arrived with nothing but a pair of gloves and a trash bag. But he cleared the whole yard in 3 hours. She paid him $50 and gave him a sandwich. That night, he returned to the station and gave the money to Eli and Nina. We're getting a room tomorrow, he said with a smile. 1 job led to 2, then 5. Then 10. Jamal woke up every day before sunrise, took Eli and Nina to a local community center where they could wash up and rest, and then went off to work. He never said no to any task. Hard work, moving furniture, painting fences, he did it. All people trusted him because he never broke a promise, worked hard, smiled often, and listened when people talked. As the weeks passed, something unexpected happened. People started calling him Mr. J, just like the kids did. By month 3, he had enough money to rent a small studio apartment. It's 1 room, a tiny kitchen, and an old mattress on the floor. But it was warm, it was safe, it was theirs. He enrolled Eli and Nina in school. He made their lunches every morning, walked them to the bus stop, and read to them at night. They weren't his children by blood, but in every other way. They were his. One night after dinner, Nina looked up at him and said, "When I grow up, I want to help people just like you do." Jamal felt something in his chest crack open, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope he began dreaming again. He started writing in a notebook plans, names, ideas. He wanted to create something bigger, a business that stood for more than money, a company that gave jobs to people like him, a company that gave second chances. He named it Second Spark. At first, it was just a name on paper, but Jamal believed. In it, he believed in people, believed that there were others like him, kind, capable, overlooked hand. He wanted to build a place where they could shine. He saved every penny, took no days off. Sometimes he skipped meals so the kids could eat better. He printed business cards, made a simple website, and used social media to spread the word. And slowly, it worked. He got bigger jobs cleaning out storage units, painting small offices, even helping a local school with repairs. He hired his first part-time worker, Carlos, a quiet man in his 50s, who had once been homeless and now just wanted a chance. Jamal didn't ask for resumes or fancy words. He looked people in the eye and said, "Are you willing to show up and care?" That was enough for him. Within a year, Second Spark had 5 workers, a small office space in a strip mall, and a van with the company name painted on the side. Eli and Nina thrived in school. They smiled more, laughed more. The darkness in their eyes began to fade, but Jamal never forgot where he came from. One day, he passed the Golden Fork, the restaurant where he once scrubbed dishes, paused, staring at the grand windows and gold-trimmed doors. For a second, he felt the old sting of humiliation, but then smiled. He wasn't angry anymore. He was proud. A few months later, Second Spark was invited to a local business conference. Jamal was nervous. He'd never spoken in front of a crowd. But Eli encouraged him. "Just tell the truth," he said. "That's what you do best." And so, Jamal stood in front of a room full of business owners, CEOs, and investors. He wore a borrowed suit, held his notes in shaking hands, and said, "I started with nothing. Just a bowl of soup and a promise. I was judged, ignored, and thrown out. But I never gave up, because I knew that kindness matters. I knew that people matter. If we give folks a second spark, they will shine." The room went quiet. Then, slowly they stood and clapped. By the end of that week, 2 investors offered to help Jamal expand. But he didn't accept right away. He wanted to grow Second Spark the right way with heart, not just money. Still, word spread. Local news did. A story on him. Then national outlets. From homeless to hero, the headlines read. His face was suddenly everywhere, and one day as he sipped coffee in a cafe with Eli and Nina beside him, a familiar name popped up on his phone. Robert Manning, the man who once called him a thief, the man who fired him without a second thought. Jamal looked at the screen, smiled. He didn't answer, not yet, because he had something bigger planned. It had been 5 years since Jamal Davis was thrown out of the Golden Fork. 5 years since he stood in the snow, jobless, with 2 hungry children at his side. Now, everything was different. Jamal was the founder and CEO of Second Spark Solutions, a growing company that had helped hundreds of people rebuild their lives. They provided cleaning, repair, moving, and property care services, but more importantly, they gave jobs to those no one else would. Ex-cons, homeless folks, recovering, addicts, single parents. All were welcome as long as they were willing to work with heart. He had 2 offices now, a team of 22 employees, 3 vans. And still, he greeted every worker by name, shook their hands and checked on their families. Every Friday, they shared a team meal. Every month, Jamal personally read the feedback from clients, handwritten on cards. Every holiday, Eli and Nina, now older, healthier, and happier, sat beside him at the front desk helping file invoices, paint walls, or decorate for company potlucks. They were no longer the scared children in the snow. They were home. 1 cold January morning, Jamal got a letter. A legal one. Thick paper, gold print, official seal. The sender? The Golden Fork Group LLC. His eyebrows raised. Apparently, the restaurant chain had fallen on hard times. Poor leadership. Low staff morale. Negative reviews about cold service and overpriced meals. Robert Manning, still the CEO, was looking to sell off one of the properties, the downtown location. The same building Jamal once mopped and scrubbed, the asking price. Just within reach of Jamal's new line of credit, he laughed. Not out of revenge, not out of bitterness, but out of the pure, strange poetry of life. The man who fired him for helping children was now unknowingly offering him the keys to the very place where it all began. Jamal didn't hesitate. He called his lawyer, signed the paperwork, and 3 weeks later, he owned the Golden Fork. He didn't make a big announcement, no press, no flashy moves, just quiet change. The first day he walked in, his owner, most of the old staff didn't recognize him. He wore the same plain black jacket, same quiet smile. He walked to the front counter. The hostess glanced at him without much interest. "We're not open for walk-ins today. Big changes happening, I know," Jamal said. I'm here to help with that. She looked confused, but didn't argue. He wandered the space for a while, memories flashing back, being scolded for mopping too slowly, being ignored in the kitchen, being shouted at for feeding two kids. He paused near the back door, the same one where Eli and Nina once stood, shaking and cold. He touched the handle, then turned around and walked into the main hall. Robert Manning wasn't there anymore. He had stepped back, according to the papers, leaving a manager in. "Charge, Mr. Holden," a man in his 30s with a stiff suit and cold eyes. "Can I help you?" Holden asked, not rising from his seat. "Yes," Jamal replied calmly. "I'm the new owner," Holden laughed, until Jamal handed him the papers. The man went pale. "You're the one who bought us out?" "That's right," Jamal said with a calm smile. "You'll be getting your final paycheck by Friday." Holden stood up, angry now. "You can't just fire everyone." "I can," Jamal said, "because I'm not just buying this building. I'm rebuilding what it stands for. Just like that, he dismissed the entire management team, not out of cruelty, but because the culture had been poisoned. The same coldness that once pushed him out still lingered in the walls. He closed the restaurant for a full month. During that time, he brought in second sparks workers, painters, cleaners to transform the space. Gone were the gold chandeliers and velvet chairs. In came warm lighting, local art, community bookshelves, and open tables. The new name? The Warm Fork. The mission was simple: affordable meals, dignified service, and jobs for those who needed a second chance. The day before opening, Jamal called a meeting with all the new staff, many of whom had never worked in restaurants before. He stood in the middle of the dining room, rolled up sleeves and clipboard in hand. "I was once mopping the floors right over there," he said, pointing. "I was invisible to most people, and I was fired for feeding two hungry kids." Everyone grew quiet, but I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to show you what happens when we believe in people, when we lead with kindness. This place is yours now. Treat everyone who walks in here like they matter, because they do. They clapped, not like employees clapping for a boss, but like people who finally felt seen. Opening day was packed, lines wrapped around the block. The food. It was simple, but good. Service was warm. Customers left smiling, and near the kitchen, Jamal saw two familiar faces, Eli and Nina, now teenagers, dressed in server aprons, carrying trays with pride. He smiled at them. They smiled back. One table asked Jamal why he named the restaurant. "The Warm Fork," he answered, "because warmth should be the first thing you feel, before the food even arrives." Later that night, when the doors closed and the team gathered for their first Induvda meeting, someone asked Jamal what the future held. He looked around the room, at the tired faces, the hopeful eyes, the people who had never been given a chance until now, and he said, "We're just getting started." The Warm Fork wasn't just a restaurant. It became a movement. People from all walks of life began to visit not just for the food, but for the feeling. Warm welcomes, honest service, real stories behind every face. Word spread quickly and soon. Magazines and local TV stations were asking questions. Who is Jamal Davis? To some, he was just a former dishwasher turned business owner. But to the staff at the Warm Fork, the many who knew his journey, he was something more. He was proof. Proof. Kindness wasn't weakness. That second chances mattered. That one person's quiet compassion could ignite real change. Jamal never liked the spotlight. So when the press came, he always redirected the attention to his team. "Talk to Carla," he'd say. "She used to live in her car. Now she manages the lunch shift and trains new hires." "Speak to Mike Heed. Add he got out of prison 3 years ago and just received Employee of the Month for the 3rd time. He believed success should be shared always. Eli and Nina, now in high school, began mentoring younger children at a nearby youth center. They told their story openly, not with shame, but with strength. "Mr. J saved us," Nina once said in front of a packed auditorium, not just with food, but with belief. That line echoed online for weeks. People began emailing Jamal, writing letters, even stopping by from other cities. How can I start something like this in my neighborhood? Can you train me to open a warm fork in my town? Jamal smiled. At each request, he didn't want to become a franchise. That wasn't his goal. He didn't want more buildings, he wanted more sparks. So he created the Second Spark Foundation, a nonprofit that offered support, tools, and mentorship to people who wanted to start socially driven businesses in their own cities. The foundation partnered with community colleges, small banks, and local shelters to find potential leaders with vision and heart. Within a year, 4 new restaurants opened across the country in Detroit, Atlanta, Oakland, and Baltimore. None were called the Warm Fork. Each had its own name, its own soul, but they all carried the same fire. Jamal visited each one personally, not as a CEO, not with security or cameras, just as himself, an apron in hand, ready to help in the kitchen. He still lived in a modest apartment, still wore his same simple watch, still took Eli and Nina to school when he could. One afternoon, while walking through the back of his restaurant, Jamal paused by the old door where he once handed out soup to freezing kids. It had been replaced now, but he still remembered the chill in the air that night, the fear in their eyes, the warmth of that first thank you. He placed his hand on the wall beside it and whispered, "Thank you, too." Because that night hadn't broken him, it had built him 2 years later. Jamal stood on the stage of a national business summit, wearing a crisp black suit. Thousands of people in the audience, cameras everywhere. He had been invited to speak, not about money, but about impact. He adjusted the mic, looked around, and began. "I used to clean floors in a restaurant where no one knew my name. One day, I gave food to 2 hungry kids at the back door, and I got fired for it. That could have been the end of my story, but it wasn't." The room was silent because kindness doesn't need permission. And when you lead with it, no matter how small the act, the world can't ignore it forever. People wiped tears. Some stood, others just nodded slowly, feeling something deep in their chest. Jamal ended his speech with the same words. He once told his team years ago, "We're not here to be perfect. We're here to be human. And every human deserves a spark." Back in his office, later that night, Jamal sat with Eli and Nina. Nina was now 17, planning to study social work. Eli was 19, working part-time with the foundation while studying nonprofit management. "You know," Eli said, smiling, "it still feels crazy." From that bench to all this, Jamal nodded. It was never about the building or the business. "What was it about then?" Nina asked. Jamal looked at both of them and said softly, "It was always about love."